Well, good morning, everyone. This is Live Mike, and I'm Michael Gant, your host. We're here in the studios on yet another rainy day. We just, man, it looks like we're in a pattern for this summer. Gardens are starting to struggle already. A garden will grow for a while, but then it starts to rot, and so we're in a pattern. And it's the weekend, and it looks like the weekend's going to be rain again. Listen, I've got a very special guest this morning. I want to introduce you to him in just a moment, but just make one announcement. I don't have any upcoming program announcements. We've got some things in the works, but nothing concrete yet in terms of special guests to join me. But for those of you who are up north in the northern tier of the state, I'm going to be preaching at Vibrant Church in South Burlington on Sunday morning, Father's Day. I'm looking forward to that, and I believe it's going to be an exciting time. I'm looking forward to the weekend and spending it with Pastor Mark Fay and the fine folks at Vibrant Church in South Burlington. I think I got to check my records, but I think they begin their service. I'm just trying to get rid of something here. Hang on a second. They begin their service at 9:30 a.m. on Sunday morning. So if you're up in the Northeast and want to join us, I'd love to see you. Make sure you let me know you're there and introduce yourself. Well, I have a special guest this morning. His name is Glenn Olson. He is the director. I think, well, let's bring him in here. I know you're with Fellowship of Christian Athletes. What's your official title? It's New England Northeast Director, what?
Northern New England Director.
Northern New England Director. I knew I had it right, and I've got it written down somewhere, Glenn, but if you don't remember where you put your notes, how are you going to remember how to look at them? And that seems to be an increasing problem in my life these days.
I can relate.
Yeah, I think there's a hole in my brain somewhere that stuff slips through, and then it occurs to me about 3:00 in the morning. I'll wake up out of a sound sleep and say, I remember that guy's name now. So Glenn Olson is the Northern New England Director of Fellowship of Christian Athletes. That close enough?
That's
all right. All right. But you actually live in the Rutland area, right?
Right in Rutland, yes.
Well, right in Rutland. Spent a lot of great days there as a young seminary student. I went to school in Western Massachusetts, and I hitchhiked from Lenox, Massachusetts every Friday afternoon to Rutland, where I served as a student youth pastor in a local church there. The church doesn't no longer exist anymore. And then either Sunday night or Monday morning early, back out with my thumb, and I'd hitchhike. And that was great. Except, January, February, it got to be a little brutal. Every once in a while, somebody would pick me up, and every once in a while, somebody would pay for me a bus ticket back to Lenox rather than making it. But that was in the 60s, man. I mean, it was a different world than we live in now. I don't think you would even dare hitchhike out there those times of the night or day anymore. Well, let me see. My daughter Robin Stiers is in here. Hello, Robin. And Kevin Redeemed, and he says Guten Morgen. New guest. Thank you. Glad you're joining in. We've got a bunch of other people watching, but they haven't chimed in yet. There's Kevin. Okay, praise God. Hey, brother, how are you this morning? Tell us a little bit about Glenn Olson.
Sure. And I sometimes forget that title myself because I was Vermont State Director up until March when it was expanded. So I often forget as well. So
yeah.
Well, let's see. I've been in. I'm a native just outside the Boston area. Grew up just north of the city, and my wife and I both went to Gordon College, which is where we met. We've been married 41 years now, but back in those days. I was a teacher. There were no education jobs in Massachusetts back in the early 80s. I went to Vermont. We thought we'll go up to Vermont, get 2 or 3 years experience, and we'll move back.
Yeah.
That was in 1983. And I guess I'm not experienced, never got experienced enough to move back. But once we settled here, we were in Swanton, Vermont, up in the northwest corner of the state for 5 years. And we've been here since 88. And never the desire to move back to the Boston area left us a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. When my wife, I came to New England, went to school for a year and a half, well, almost 2 years. And I decided I'm not going to do this without my gal. And so I went back to North Carolina, took a semester off, married her, brought her back, said to her parents, I'm going to finish school and we'll be right back. That was in 1969. And here we are exactly. We moved to Brattleboro in February of 1972, and we're still here. Okay, Kevin, you got to quit changing your name on you. Now I remember this is my friend Kevin Nowicki from down in Albemarle, North Carolina. So we're kind of all over the place today. So you came to Vermont for 5 years teaching experience, and here you are.
Here I am, 40 some odd years later. But yeah, I was blessed to be raised by parents who love the Lord, and as was my wife. So we were very fortunate to be raised in Christian homes, be very actively engaged, and we were both involved in sports, but both very involved in our churches, also youth groups growing up, and both of us committed our lives to Christ, pre-teens. And so now, however, that doesn't mean I'll speak for myself, I'm not going to speak for her. It doesn't mean I didn't wander and live more of a carnal life at times. But my relationship with Jesus was always a priority for me. And as I said, we love sports too. We both were very active, and I played hockey in college. She played basketball and volleyball. We met in intro to PE class at Gordon College many years ago. And but even though I accepted the Lord early and I understood what it meant to follow Jesus and to love and serve Him, I kind of felt like many times I lived my life in these three silos. I had my Christian silo, I had my family silo, and I had my sports silo. And they were almost three independent lives. Occasionally they might interact. And it really wasn't until college, and I had a college hockey coach who was also a local pastor. Norm Howarth was his name, wonderful man, who really helped me see that, number one, that they can't be separate. They shouldn't be separate, that we need to integrate our faith and sport, and that is a way to, we can be the hands and feet of Christ through our sports as well. And we can have a positive impact on the lives of others through our sports. And we can grow in our relationship with Jesus through our sports also, through the many challenges that we might face. And so that was really a kind of turning point for me, was really at that point, because up until then, when I played hockey, I was about hockey. It was, hockey was on the throne, not Jesus.
Right.
And so it's
amazing how different things climb onto the throne at different times, and we don't realize it. We were talking in our men's fellowship last night about idolatry. And, we think of idolatry as somebody who's got a stone statue on their mantle or something, and they bow down in front of it and worship. And we don't understand how many times ordinary things in our lives become idols. And sports is one of the biggest. As a matter of fact, we had a couple of guys who actually acknowledged that last night, that for a long time in their lives, their activity in sports was their life.
Guilty, it's we have what we call huddles, which are Bible studies, and what we do in the schools, but we also do a coaches one we do it on Zoom, because we have coaches from all around the state. And that's a frequent conversation that we have, is how it's so easy to put our coaching up on that throne. And I'm absolutely guilty of that, whether it was through playing or especially in my early coaching years. That became my primary focus. I coached high school hockey in Vermont for about 20 years. And right out of college, I had my first head coaching job up at Missisquoi, MVU, in Swanton. And there's no doubt that that was on the throne all too often. And so we talk about that a lot with our coaches huddles, about not making our coaching, not making the sports. Those can't be an idol. They're absolutely fantastic activity. They're a great way to develop as humans and develop as followers of Christ if we have the right mindset going in, but we can't put them on the throne.
Yeah.
And
Well, what happens, I think what happens to people, particularly people who excel in certain things, sports, coaching, whatever it is, that very dangerously becomes our identity,
oh yeah, yeah,
and we're identified. And I would even say, I'm a pastor. I'm a lifelong pastor, and a lot of times in my life, that was my identity. Even to me, that everything was wrapped up in what I do, and our identity is always in Christ. It's not, and what we do for the kingdom. I can't remember the reference right now, but Paul says to us, "Whatever you do it to the glory of God,"
right.
and that means to keep Him on the throne. But I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of people in all sorts of walks of life that particularly men. I think men fall prey to it more than the ladies. We Somebody says, tell me about yourself, and I immediately start
Yes.
telling them what I do.
Yeah.
Not what I am or not what Christ is, but
Mhm.
what I am. And so I realize, wow, my whole identity is wrapped up in what I do.
Yeah.
And if we fail in what we do, or there's a struggle in what we do, then we struggle with our identity.
Yeah. Well, in my coaching years in particular, especially early on, as I said,
Hmm.
if uh, particularly if we lost a game, it was me. I took that all upon myself. I wasn't looking beyond developing young men, but I was looking
Hmm.
at it. It reflected on me, and that's the way I looked at it. It's
Hmm.
I was successful or I failed, and rather than am I being the hands and feet of Christ in the lives of these young people? Am I helping
Right.
them develop character,
Yep.
develop, um, um, just to young men who are going to go on and have successful careers, be disciplined in their
Yeah.
lives, and I was idolizing it way too often, especially those wins and losses. But I don't know if you've seen or if any of your listeners have seen Sports Spectrum has a lot of great posts they'll put out on social media of athletes, and they'll talk about just this. I was, but now I am, or this
Yeah.
is, I am not. I just saw one. Hockey is my primary sport, and I saw a hockey player last night was quoted as saying, I was always wrapped up in my wins and losses and who I was as a player, but that's not who I am.
That's right.
I'm a
That's
follower of
right.
Jesus, and He's first and
Mhm.
foremost in my life. And they do a wonderful job of getting it out there. And there are actually so many. I mentioned this at a church I spoke at recently. It's been so exciting to see so many college and professional athletes after getting, not just saying, I thank God for this win today. Thank you for the ability He gave me, but they're
Mhm.
sharing testimonies. They're
Yeah.
sharing the gospel message. I mean,
Yeah.
watching the college football playoffs and seeing coaches and athletes say, that they're a follower of Jesus. And here's why. Because this
Right.
is one of the
Right.
quotes from the Boise State player and Boise State coach after a game was, Jesus is the true champion because
Yeah.
He came and lived the perfect life I couldn't live. He died on the cross for
Yeah.
me. And they're giving the whole
Yeah.
testimony on
Yeah.
national TV and the stadium full of people and
I
just
always like
boldly.
uh, I always like press conferences with Joe Mazzulla.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Joe manages to put things in perspective when he does those things.
Yes, he
And
does.
speaking of wins and losses, I think one of the things that I learned a long time ago was that some of the greatest lessons and character building moments in my life were in my losses, not in my victories, but in my losses.
Absolutely.
How do you deal with that? And
Oh,
that'll kind of tell you where your heart is.
yes, it will. It will.
Yeah,
And
it
that's
really
whether
is.
you're as a player or a coach. It fits
Yeah.
both ways. But um, so anyways, I spent 36 years in public education as a teacher, administrator, athletic director, principal before leaving. But I've been with FCA now since 2019. I left my teaching job, I was principal at that time. Many would say, right before COVID, boy, I knew what I was doing getting out when I did from education. However, the flip side of that is when you're involved in a ministry that focuses on, having Bible studies in schools, that's hard to do when schools aren't in session as well. So
Ooh,
one
yeah.
challenge, but we quickly transitioned to a Zoom mode. But,
Mhm.
for probably about 5 to 10 years before that, I felt like God was calling me some sort of ministry, but I didn't know what it was. I just felt just a tug towards something in ministry. And sports, as I said, I've always been passionate about.
Yeah.
Our 3 kids all played sports. They all played right through college. They're all coaching to this day. 2 of them at the high school level, 1 at the rec department level. And so it's been a big part of our family. And back, oh no, I'll get the years wrong, 13, 15, about 2015, I guess, or so, our youngest daughter went to Gordon College where she played basketball. And we would go down to all their games. And she was also the FCA leader down there. We'd go down to her games, and if the game would end, they'd invite the other team to pray with them at half court. And most of the teams would, even though only one other school was Christian school. Most would join them and pray after the game. And I just leave there, I love this. This is an awesome environment. They're out there competing, win or lose. They're inviting the other team to pray with them. And I love that environment. She had been out for about a year, and I was really missing that, going down and being involved in that Christian environment around sports.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to the athletic director down at Gordon, who graduated with my wife and I there many years ago. And I said, John, do me a favor. If you hear I said, I love what I'm doing. I'm not looking to leave, but I also feel called to some sort of ministry, and I love sports. If you hear of a job open in a college athletic department, a Christian college athletic department somewhere, would you let me know? The next day, I was on Facebook, and I see a post that they're looking for a state director for Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Now, it wasn't the Christian college I was looking at, but there were 2 boxes, that I was looking to check: ministry and sports. I was just thinking schools.
Yeah.
But God was thinking, no, FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
Right.
And I saw that post. I immediately reached out, and that was April of 2019. And as a school administrator, that's getting late in the school year to leave. I met with my superintendent and said, hey, I'd like to leave at the end of the school year. He said, well, can you give me 1 more year? I said, well, I could, but this is what I'm looking to do. He said, all right, get me a letter by the end of the week. And that was it. 2019, I left that position and began raising my support to come on staff. And by that November, I was on staff with Fellowship Christian Athletes. And it's been such a blessing. And just to be able to see the Lord move in amazing ways here in the state, it's just been such a blessing.
Right. Now, we have a mutual friend who was involved in FCA for a long time, Rob Latito, I think. Right. I actually was at breakfast with Rob with a men's group on Saturday.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I hadn't seen him in a long time. But
now, I never met Rob, but I used to hear his.
But you know who he is.
I know who he is. Back in about 95, 96, somewhere in that range, I was the huddle advisor for the huddle, the Bible study at Rutland High School. And at that point, he was very actively involved. And I think at that point, Rutland High and Oxbow were the only 2 existing FCAs going on in Vermont. It's changed a lot since then, but yeah. So I know who he is, but I've never met him.
All right, so let's kind of take a swing here. Now you're a regional director for FCA. For those of us who are ignorant, what does FCA do? What is FCA all about?
Sure. Well, the vision of FCA is to see the world transformed by Jesus Christ through the influence of coaches and athletes. And when you think about the influence coaches and athletes can have on our society, if we can make that influence a positive one that points people to Jesus, what a great opportunity to impact the world, impact our schools and communities. In fact, Don McClannon is a gentleman who really had the idea for FCA. This was it's 70 years old this fall. So it was 1955 it began. He had met previously with Branch Rickey, who's one who signed Jackie Robinson with the Dodgers. He had asked Branch Rickey for a 5-minute meeting, and his comment was, if athletes can promote cigarettes, alcohol, shaving cream, why can't they promote Jesus? So he went and met with Branch Rickey, who granted him 5 minutes. 5 hours later, that meeting ended, and FCA was birthed coming out of that.
Wow.
And so it's really about ministering to coaches and athletes. Back then, it was primarily focused on athletes. Now we minister to and through coaches, but the athlete is a primary focus still. And how can we share the love of Jesus with them, help them develop their faith, where they become confident enough to truly influence their peers, their parents, their friends, whoever it might be, with the love of Jesus. So that's the vision of FCA. When we think about, I might get these numbers wrong. Actually, I have it here somewhere. There are over 40 million youth that play sports in 2023. There are 242 million people overall. That's 80% of those ages 6 and up. What a mission field.
Yeah.
It uniquely positions a ministry like FCA to impact the world for Jesus by going where so many of our kids, our friends, our neighbors are, the rinks, the ball fields, the courts, the gyms around the state, and to be able to interact with them there, to engage them there, to share the love of Jesus with them there. There's so many. Sports is our society, for good or bad, because there's certainly plenty of bad with it also. We see plenty of examples of those as well. But there's so many examples of athletes and coaches who, you mentioned Joe Mazzulla, who love the Lord and are using the platform they have to share the hope of Jesus with others. And so that's our vision, is that we can raise up more men and women who are willing to do that, and who are grown in their own faith and willing to share their faith with others as well.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, sports, you look at it, the nation really is consumed with some kind of sports. And the amount of money, I mean, that is actually a problem in some ways. They're so massive. I look at even, what it costs to get a ticket to go to a ball game. I mean, my grandson was blessed by a family member who was given tickets, really good seats at game 5 of the New York Boston playoff game. And I mean, that was an amazing series, and he got to be right there. But when they looked at what those tickets cost, it was like, bug-eyed. I can't believe the money that we spend on sports. And it is, I think, in many people's lives, it rises to the level of idolatry, really. And it is an amazing mission field because it has so much impact. I'm watching things blink. I don't know if that means we've got a tree on a line or something, but I just had lights that kind of flickered here. So, folks, if we suddenly go off the air, it's not our fault. Richard Odumo from Nakuru, Kenya, welcome in here, my friend. It's late in the day for him. They're 7 hours ahead of us on the clock, but it's good to see you in here, Richard. And so it's amazing.
Yeah. With Richard being on there, FCA is actually now in almost 100 countries as well around.
Are you in Kenya?
You know what? I was trying to think of that as you mentioned where he's from. I think so. I believe we are.
Well, Kenya is one of the probably most developed parts of East Africa, anyway. So I would be amazed if you weren't there. Yeah, I've spent almost 30 years traveling back and forth to Kenya, working on various projects, and they love their sports.
Yeah. I'm thinking of a promo video we have, and I'm pretty sure it's from Kenya. One clip they have in there. So
yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So the administering to and through coaches and through the athletes is, our mission is to lead every coach and athlete to a growing relationship with Jesus Christ and His church. And one of our goals is to really partner with churches around the state. Mm-hmm. It's wonderful if the students come to our Bible studies that take place in the schools, and coaches are engaged in our coaches huddle, but we want to make sure they're all plugged into the local church as well.
Right.
So we try to get to know the area churches, the pastors, and help them find a church where the Word of God is being taught.
Right.
And help them understand the importance that it's wonderful you come to this Bible study once a week before school starts.
Yeah.
But who's your church family? Where are you being poured into weekly from a church family and church body as well? So that's really important part as well.
And that's interesting that you would say that, because one of the struggles that I have is that sometimes what we loosely call parachurch ministries, ministries that are apart from the church, often become a substitute for church.
Right.
And I don't know if you recognize the name Clive Calver.
I do not.
Clive Calver served as the head. He's a Brit. He's from originally from the British. He's from England, and he was the head of the evangelical church in whatever organization they had in London or in Great Britain, and he was invited to serve as the president or chairman of the board or something for World Vision, which is a missionary organization, but it's a parachurch organization. And it's interesting, in his inaugural speech, when he spoke after he'd accepted the role, he said, I guess I should confess now, I don't like parachurch ministries. and his reasoning was this. He says, so often they become they're not auxiliaries of the church. They don't really come alongside. They run their own thing and they become a substitute. So he said, my goal with World Vision is that World Vision will help the church become the church. Mm-hmm. That he saw this organization as a mechanism to help the church function in their calling.
Yeah.
And I always admired that about him because when you look up and you find that you have church members who are far more involved in this thing over here, which may be a good thing,
right?
But they're removed, really, in terms of effectiveness, they're removed from the local church. And that's concerning.
Yeah.
That should always be concerning. So I'm happy to hear that you're really focused on helping athletes and coaches to get plugged into the local church.
And and it works the other way around too. I mean we really insist on that. We really
urge
them to get involved. But the local church is such an amazing partner with our ministry as well. And, I look primarily two areas where FCA has been most active in our state was right here in the Rutland region at first. Melissa Crossman has been on staff for almost 11 years. She was it in Vermont until I joined 5 years ago and doubled the Vermont staff.
Double the staff with two of them.
Yep. And we live 5 miles apart. So we're both right here. But I met with a group of pastors up in St. Albans a number of years ago. And when I first got started, had some connections, opportunities to speak at some churches up there, and we ran a camp up there. And there were such amazing church partners in that camp. And now to pull them together, each summer we've been doing this up there. Last summer we had 135, I think it was 135 at that particular camp in St. Albans. But the number of churches that are part of that, where they're providing coaches, campers, the athletes, the healthcare, the other volunteers, registration, and it's an opportunity to mobilize the church and the community as well. And in fact, one of the churches I spoke with up in Franklin, Pastor Jason McConnell, after I talked and shared about camp, Jason got up and said, he said, I know we have a lot of athletes and coaches in this room, and I'm going to be at that camp. And so I expect to see you there as well. And that was year one of that camp.
Yeah.
Jason helped coach mountain biking at that camp. His kids are all, in fact, he just had a text message from his son this morning, all involved in the camp. And just to see the people from these different churches come together to be the church, to get outside their own walls and to serve together in their community, it's an amazing experience. And we have the same thing here in the Rutland area. The number of churches that come together and the pastors that work well together in helping to train up our huddle leaders to share a message at camp one day. It's just, it's exciting to see just such unity in the body. And pulled together throughout different ministries.
So, Glenn, I want to focus on a couple of words that you said there. First of all, you're talking about camp, and I know FCA runs sports camps. And the other thing is the huddle.
Yeah.
So I really like you to talk about each of those things separately. What are they? How do they work? How do you set them up? How are they effective?
Sure. I'll start with the huddles first, since that's most of the year.
Yeah, right.
Our huddles are, not strictly campus-based Bible studies. They used to be strictly campus-based. Now they happen in a variety of venues, but mostly they're on school campuses. When we have students, they're student-led, student-driven, and certainly in the public schools, they have to be.
Yeah.
For a number of years, probably the longest-running huddle in Vermont is at Castleton University. That's been going on for 11 years since Melissa came on staff. She was a coach there at the time. Once we have students interested in the huddle, we train them. We have FCA produces an athlete's Bible, which within the Bible itself, there's over 2,000 lessons that they can do with their peers. on a variety of life topics, on a variety of, one huddle was telling me, in fact, this young man, Jason McConnell's son, who just texted me, they were leading their huddle through Ecclesiastes. He's one of the huddle leaders at BFA St. Albans. And so the huddle, we train them on how to lead a huddle. One of the things that people who are growing up in the church may not think of is, you don't go into a Bible study with people who may be unchurched and say, open to Ecclesiastes. They have no idea what you're talking about. And so we'll train them on how to do that, to how to help people feel comfortable, not to feel out of place, to feel welcomed, to, don't call out to somebody and ask them to pray when they may have never prayed in their life. And so we really work with the huddle leaders on how to do that, and how to make it a welcoming environment where they can share the love of Jesus with their peers in the school environment, school setting. One of the first things I did when I joined staff was to walk into Essex High School carrying 2 cases of Bibles. I said, this is awesome. We're getting these Bibles into the public schools. The advisor for that huddle was a math teacher there, and she said to me a couple of weeks after they get started, she said, Glenn, last year I was debating if why I was still teaching. Did I want to keep doing this? She said, now once a week I have 25, 30 kids in my classroom having a Bible study. Said, this is fantastic. Wow. So it's about just sharing the love of Jesus in a small group setting. It's just like a small group that many of our churches would hold, but we're doing it in a school with the students who are there. A quick story on one at Norwich University, which is a pretty large huddle. After they meet on Monday nights. And there was a young man who started coming a little bit later after the school year got started. He was coming on his own. And one of the huddle leaders, a young man by the name of Maddox, said, I just felt the Lord call me to go speak with this young man one night. Said, so I went up to him and I felt God was telling me to share my testimony. So I did, and asked him if he had ever accepted Jesus as his Lord and Savior. And the kid looked up and said, I've been around the church all my life, but no, I really haven't. So Maddox said, well, is there anything keeping you from doing that now? So they prayed together, and this young man committed his life to Christ. A week later, I don't know if you know the Reverend Wick at Norwich.
I know of him, yeah.
They cut a hole in the ice in the river behind campus, and this young man was baptized.
Listen, I've had some baptismal services in some pretty cold water, but that's stretching it a little bit. I've seen pictures actually of baptisms in Russia where they have to cut huge holes in the ice, and they go down in this thing and baptize them. And then, man, oh man, I don't know. I'm a Southerner. That don't cut any ice with me right now.
Yeah, no, it's a picture I now show when I speak at various churches. I'll show that one, and then there's right beside it will be a young lady at UVM being baptized in the pool. I said, what better use for a state university pool than to hold a baptism? Yeah. And that was a lot more comfortable than the one in the river, I'm sure. But our huddles have really been growing a lot. God's really opened doors to different schools. Even within the last couple months here of the school year, we've had, Spalding High School, U32 High School, Mount Mansfield High School, St. Albans Town Elementary School, all within the last couple months started huddles even late in the school year. So we're up to about 24 of them now around Vermont at the colleges, high schools. Georgia Elementary and St. Albans Elementary are the first middle schools that we've been into, and just continuing to grow. In fact, 2 young ladies at Spalding High School, we didn't have any connection with these two young ladies. Somehow they heard about FCA. I guess it was through some friends who they know who go to Essex High School, and they heard about their huddle. So these girls found out what huddle was. They went to the administration. This was without any involvement from our staff at all. And they got the approval to get started. They were on Christian book distributors looking to buy the FCA Athlete Bibles. And fortunately, we found out about this first because it's a lot cheaper to get the Bibles right from FCA than to go through distributor. And so these girls started this huddle, and I just got a video from them last week, from our staff member who works with them. And they had a step-up night, they call it, at Spalding High School, or I guess they have all the clubs can share what they're all about looking into next year. And these girls were just so excited about all the kids that signed up interested to join Fellowship Christian Athlete next year. And they recorded this video themselves. Just they were all giddy over it. And it's just so exciting to see young people with a passion, to share Jesus with their peers like these young ladies did, or others who have started the huddles in their schools as well.
It's amazing that this is happening. It's very encouraging because generally the public education system is not particularly friendly toward Christian groups. And so it's amazing to hear that all of these huddles are going around in universities and in high schools and elementary schools, and it sounds like it's growing. It's something that's increasing.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I will say it hasn't been without some roadblocks along the way. There were
Sure.
a couple of schools that balked. One of the schools that started this fall up in the northwest corner of the state. Young lady who was looking to start it kept meeting with the administration, kept meeting with them. They kept putting her off. She finally got approval the day after they held their activity fair, where every activity got to go in front of the whole school and share what they're all about. The next day, they got their approval. I don't think that was coincidence, but you know what? The huddle's thriving. And this is a very small high school up in the northwest part of the state. And the huddle's doing wonderful. And this young lady was just determined. She I want to just tell you a story. Can I share a story about her?
Sure.
About this young lady? It kind of ties into camps, and I was going to get to that in a minute here. But this young lady, I shouldn't say typical, but a teenager who's challenged with a lot of things. She was involved with drugs, alcohol, inappropriate relationships with boys, suspended from school, just a lot of challenges. But she was also into karate. And her karate teacher at her dojo is actually now on staff with us. And a couple of summers ago, she convinced this young lady to go to our high school camp down in the Boston area. She didn't want to go. She balked at it. Didn't want to do this at all. Didn't interest her. She wanted to stay home and party with her friends, that kind of stuff. But she went, and she had an experience with Jesus that summer, and she committed her life to Christ. She came home just so excited and wanted to she got actively involved in her church, very involved in the youth group, serving in various ministries there. She then went back last summer to camp, same one down at Gordon College for the high school kids. And this time she came home absolutely determined to bring the huddle to her campus, the Bible study to her school. And so that's the particular school where she met a lot of resistance. And but she was faithful. She just really felt very strongly this was what God was calling her to do. And so she knew it was going to happen. It was just a matter of time. And she was faithful in that. And now they're meeting regularly at her high school, having their Bible study as a result of her faithfulness. And as coach, encouraging her to go to this camp 2 summers ago.
Yeah,
where it all began. So
that's amazing. There is a movement among our youth. We look at so much of what's shown on the TV screen and what we see in other places about the wretched condition of the hearts of the youth of America. But there's something, maybe it's still an undercurrent, but it really seems to be a real spiritual awakening among our young people. I know in our church, we've just got some amazing young people right now. We revel in it. We look at it and we go, wow, this is great. If you don't have vibrant, alive young people in your church, then you're a glorified funeral home. I mean, let's face it. If something's not happening among our youth, then the church has no future.
Yeah. No, it's one of the things I really excites me is just to see the youth around our state, all levels, right up to, like I said, our college students who just have such a passion, such a fire for the Lord. And really, in fact, I mentioned the Essex Huddle earlier. The young man there, Gil was his name. Gil was a state champion wrestler, state champion in soccer also. And I had spoken with his pastor up in South Burlington, just trying to find some staff up in that area. As we were wrapping up our conversation, he says, I got a young man at my church who made the comment that his school needs Jesus. So he connected Gil and I. And so Gil went and got another young lady. Gil's now down at Liberty. The young lady's on the track team at UVM. And they started the Essex High School Huddle. Now, Gil I guess it was day before, maybe the huddle, we were communicating. I almost said to Gil, don't be disappointed. This is new. You understand, start small. You get the two of you be there and you get a few others to come join you and you build from there. Fortunately, God convinced me to keep my mouth shut. And Gil sends me a text the next day. He says, Glenn, we had 25 students show up at the huddle this morning.
Wow.
And just, to him was able to do immeasurably more than all he asked or imagine.
That's right. That's right.
And
I was just thinking, I saw Thomas Morgan in here. Thomas is from Barry. And I did a day-long seminar at Thomas's church in Barry several months ago, may have been a year or so ago. We were talking about outreach. We were talking about reaching out into the community. But there was an absolutely amazing group of young people from Norwich there.
mm,
They were outstanding students. They really were, and they were on fire for God. I'm
Yeah.
really excited about that. Yeah.
One of the things the colleges, it started at Castleton a few years back, is once or twice a year. I think initially it said once a year. Now it's only twice a year. They'll hold a worship event. And the Norwich and Castleton students were really great at engaging with each other. They'd attend each other's event. Back, I'll never forget this. It was they've all been wonderful, but it was the first Friday night in December, just this past December. Norwich hosted one. That was a Friday night on a college campus from 7 to 9:30. We had 125 to 150 young people worshiping together, praying together from multiple campuses. We had a athlete from UVM, another athlete from Castleton share their testimonies. We had a U.S. Olympic team member share her testimony. She was in the rowing team just back in Paris this past summer, shared her testimony. She not only shared her testimony, but she really challenged all the young people there to live out their faith in their teams, in their dorm rooms, in their classroom, wherever it might be. It was just an amazing night. But I thought, here we are. All the negative things people think about college students. We're on a Friday night, 2.5 hours. Look at almost 150 young people here worshiping together and just so on fire for the Lord and inviting the peers to attend. It was an amazing night. And UVM held their first one ever just this spring. And that was where the baptism happened in the school pool afterwards as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So it's exciting to see. And this is driven by these young people. They're the ones who they're on fire. They want to have an opportunity to invite their friends, their peers to come experience the love of Christ in a communal gathering and just to share the word together, hear testimonies. And there were some amazing testimonies what God has done in the lives of a couple of these young people. It's just awesome.
Amen. Okay. Transition now to camp.
Sure.
By the way, my buddy Kevin Nowicki down in North Carolina wants to know if a wetsuit would be appropriate for baptism.
It would have been, but now I can't speak to the Reverend Wick what he was wearing, but because he had his jacket on over the top. But I know the young man was not. We have a picture of him on the ice after his baptism, and he was not wearing a wetsuit. Nope.
I tell you, I've baptized in some strange places. I've baptized in hippo pools in Kenya and in what passes for a river in some places in Uganda. I've actually baptized a couple of people in a bathtub. They wanted to be baptized, and we just filled up the bathtub and put them in the tub. One guy, I still remember his legs were sticking out over the edge of the tub because we couldn't get all of him get him all in the tub. But Peter preached on the day of Pentecost when the men were convicted of their sin, and they said, "What should we do?" Peter said, "Repent and be baptized for the remission of your sins." At our church, we've really started emphasizing more than the importance of water baptism. That it's not what saves you, but it is a commandment, and it's an important part of our Christian life to take that public stand. And I have a very strong stand. I've had people say, "I want to be baptized, but I want to do it in private." And I go, then I'm not doing it because it's not a private event. It's a public testimony. And, but I'm excited to hear about it. I want to see, a few years ago, my son baptized a fellow that he'd been ministering to. Guy weighed close to 400 pounds. And I don't know how we got him in that tank and out, but we baptized him. Yeah.
Our church has gone to using what we call our holy cattle trough now. We
seen them.
Built-in one anymore because we do them so frequently. Yeah. We had a young man recently baptized there. I don't know, he must be 6'8", but when he got in, the water went out.
I've seen that happen before. All right, so tell us about FCA sports camps.
Sure. Yeah, and you mentioned transitioning, which is a great word because that's what we're doing right now. We're transitioning to that season. We have a number of camps. In fact, I think in Vermont, we probably have more camps than anyone in New England. We'll be doing six or seven this summer. Six, I guess. We have what's called a power camp, which are students up to age 12. And these are held at the Rutland one's been held for many years now. St. Albans, Northfield, you mentioned somebody there from Barrie who's on.
Yeah.
Northfield has held a power camp for the first time ever. We'll be holding one in South Burlington at Rice High School this summer.
Mm-hmm.
Those are multi-sport, and the sports we offer depend on the coaches available. You know, like here in Rutland, we've had archery. It's the only place they do archery. St. Albans has mountain biking. It's the only place we do mountain biking. Baseball, it's the only place to do that as well, and same with volleyball. So the sports vary depending on the location and who the coaches are that are available. But all these camps, and they're week-long, and they're day camps, and they consist of time with this quality coaching. We want men and women coaching who know their sports and can provide a quality coaching experience to the athletes. But obviously, time in the Word is important too. It is fellowship of Christian athletes, and that is a focus. So they'll meet in huddles at camp as well. So for the power camps, we have high school students who serve as our huddle leaders. So students are all divided into huddles during camp week. They have a different lesson every day, a different theme that the huddle leaders will cover with them. Then they'll spend time in their sports. And we generally have a guest speaker, spend some time singing some worship songs and have a message, some fun games. There's a whole group as well. We'll put all the sports together. Mm-hmm. And it's such a great opportunity for those who are churched, those who are believers, to invite their unchurched, their non-believers, friends to come join them because it's around sports. And as I mentioned earlier, the number of people playing sports, it's just such a wonderful mission field. And there are always campers who have come who aren't churched and they're hearing the word of God for the first time. And so one of the things we'll do with our huddle leaders for that too is we'll talk to them about, okay, you're going to have a lot of kids here who you might be teaching a Sunday school class if you volunteered that at your church, but you're also going to have a number of people in your huddle who may have never held a Bible before, never opened one before, never prayed before. And so we train them ahead of these camps on how to work with those young people as well. We are a volunteer intensive ministry, and our volunteer base is phenomenal. And so we rely on the local church to provide us with not only coaches, but other camp staff that we need to make it run efficient, even from providing snacks for the campers, different churches that will take on that task. Last year, we had 342 campers last year. 2 years earlier, we had 90. So the camp ministry is really growing as well. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. St. Albans, Rutland, Northfield, South Burlington for the power camps. I've held one in Manchester in the past. That was kind of a church partnership camp, and a lot of the campers who involved in that have aged out, so they're going to do a different camp experience down there. For the first time ever this summer, we're also going to run something called an All Abilities Camp. This is for our Special Olympic population. Those students who are involved in Special Olympics or unified sports. We're going to hold that also at Rice High School in South Burlington. They'll do the power camp in the morning. They'll do all abilities in the afternoons. We get to minister to that population as well. Last year, I mentioned hockey's my sport. So last year we ran our first hockey camp right here in Rutland. And then we did a mountain biking camp in Stowe. This year, we're not going to hold it in Stowe. We're incorporating it as part of the camp in St. Albans. Almost 2 years ago now, my board chairman, a wonderful man by the name of Rob Connerty, just a crazy mountain biker. I mean, the trails he rode, you wouldn't get me to walk. He's a wonderful man. The Lord took Rob home suddenly, July 2 years ago. And his wife remains on my board today, a wonderful woman. Susie's just a godly woman and loves the Lord, and they serve so well together. And so we've run what we call it Rob's Riders. So it's a mountain biking camp in memory of Rob, who was such a blessing to this ministry and just had such a heart for the Lord and for sharing him with others. I mean, just such an outgoing man who wanted others to know the hope that he had.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so we call it Rob's Riders, and we're going to embed that in the St. Albans camp this summer as well, and hopefully expand that over time. We're praying for staff in the Stowe, Barrie areas as well as down south, so we can build our camp ministry there as well. Then our high school students, I mentioned Elise going to our high school camp. That's held down at Gordon College and just north of Boston. Last year we had 150 campers, I believe, at that camp. We brought 16 from Vermont down. It's 3 days of inspiration and perspiration. And there was a lot of perspiration, a lot of inspiration too. But the weekend of it last year, it was in the 90s each day. And we went through a lot of water, a lot of heat out there in those fields in those days. And,
yeah.
They have an artificial turf field there, and that gets even warmer than natural grass. So it was a little toasty. But
I remember starting football practice in high school in August in North Carolina. That could get pretty brutal.
Yeah. I guess it's all relative, isn't it? It was probably the weather we were in down there would probably been nothing compared to what you were dealing with down.
No, that's cooling down weather,
Right. Yeah. It's just, but amazing to see the young people just again on fire. Each evening there's a program that includes a lot of time of singing worship songs, and there's a message each night. And just, I can't remember what the exact number was of young people who committed their lives to Christ at that particular camp last year. I do know of Vermonters, we had 65 young people either committed or recommitted their life to Christ at one of our camps last summer.
Super.
So 65 out of what they say, 342 who were at camp. It's just such a great opportunity to minister to people where they're at. Again, around, we know if you have kids or grandkids or nieces, nephew involved in sports, a lot of them are involved in camps in the summer. So let's have a camp where we can influence them with the love of Christ and to, share the gospel with them in a camp environment, and have them doing the sports that they want to be doing anyways. And now to be able to mix those two together. And one of the campers last year, well, there's one of the huddle leaders. I had asked kind of some questions. In my newsletter, I like to focus on some of them and be able to highlight them a little bit. And one of them made a comment, something along the lines, and I'll butcher this quote, but it's something to the effect of, I love sports, and I've grown up in church, and I committed my life to Christ years ago. It was kind of my testimony is what he's sharing. Maybe that's why I liked it so much. He said, but I never realized we could do the two together. Something to that effect was his comment. Right. I never saw the two coming together, and said, this is awesome to come out here in a sports environment and where Jesus is the focus of all that we're doing.
Right. I've got an interesting, just a story of my own, but I wanted to mention first, I put the website on the screen. If there's anybody who would like to go and check out FCA and check out what's going on, it's fcavermont.org. And you can find out. And I imagine your email address is on that website, right? So yes. I don't have to put it up as well. Go check it out. But when I was a kid, I don't want to go into my whole life story, but when I was a kid, there was a young youth pastor. I was in the 8th grade, and there was a young youth pastor who had just moved into town. And he saw me in a school play and decided he targeted me to win to the Lord. And there was a classmate of mine who went to his church, was in his youth group, and his name was Mickey. And a pastor asked me, he says, why don't you invite that Mike Gant to come to, he had a Wednesday boys club, a club for boys. And he said, invite Mike Gant to come to that boys club. And so Mickey invited me, and I turned him down flat. I said, I'm not interested in church, not interested in God, don't like preachers, the whole thing. And that goes a lot into my backstory. But anyway, he found out that I absolutely love to play football. So mysteriously, he decided that the activity after boys club for the rest of the year was going to be football. And so he said, why don't you invite Mike to come and play football with you? And so Mickey came and said, hey, that boys club I was talking about, we're going to play football at the end of, every week. It's once a week now. I think it was on Wednesdays or something. And so I would pretty much put up with anything to be able to play even semi-organized football. And so I went. Now, he didn't mention that I had to sit through a Bible study. I had, I had to listen to Christian music. I had to hear about God and, Jesus. But because I like to play football so much, I went. And as a result, I did come to know Christ. I did accept the Lord. And so these things that we tend to make the primary thing don't have to be the primary thing. They can be a gateway to reaching someone, through the things they're very, very interested in. Well, this has been very exciting. I'm really excited to hear all that's going on in the state of Vermont. It seems like there's a lot happening. You guys are doing a good job.
Like I said, God's really opened up some doors for us where we just didn't see them opening, and it's been like the Spalding High School one. That was just, I just love what he was doing there and what he's done to these young ladies. But our vision ultimately is to see a huddle on every single middle school, high school, and college campus in the state. So while we may have about 24 now, there's a lot of schools still out there.
Amen. Well, I'm thrilled to see that it is expanding, that it is growing, that a lot more than I imagined that it would be in the state of Vermont, which can be a little bit of a hostile environment sometimes for Jesus followers. But maybe times are a-changing.
Amen.
All right. Well, this has been Glenn Olson, who is the North New England director for FCA. I'll get it right one of these days.
Northern New England.
Northern New England, FCA, a Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Glenn, thank you for joining us. Thanks for sharing with us about what you're doing. And we'll be in touch. We'll be in touch. All right. All right. Now, God bless you. All right. Bye-bye. All right, folks, that was Glenn Olson of the Vermont Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Interesting stuff that he is sharing with us, and I'll get rid of this stuff in a minute. Okay, so I'm so happy you joined with us. I don't know who all's in here. I forgot Robin. Thomas Morgan, good to see you today. God bless you, my friend. Kevin Nowicki from down in Albemarle, North Carolina. Tom Morgan from Barrie. Oh, Leo Benjamin, My Faith News. He's in South Carolina, watching from South Carolina today. Are you in Aiken, Leo? I think he's in Aiken, South Carolina. My friend Richard Okumu from Nakuru, Kenya. And boy, it's great to have all of you folks in here. But this is going to end it for us here on Live Mic for a Tuesday morning, June 10th. You have a great day. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face to shine upon you. I'm Mike Gant. I've got the night mic. I've been on here for an hour, and I realize I've got the night mic logo up and not the live mic one. That shows you how observant I am this morning. But anyway, watch me on Night Mic Thursday nights at 8:30. God bless. I'm Mike Gant. This has been Live Mic here on a Tuesday morning. Bye-bye.